that music, it just makes my heart beat a little faster. It's great.
Absolutely. How are we doing this morning? Tracy, Harvey, how are we feeling?
Doing good. All excited, ready to go. Ready to give a couple of remarks when you guys have done yours.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I just want to say, I know that there's there's all these slogans about New York strong, but NYAPRS, I just feel like we're heart strong and soul strong. So after Tuesday's conference, it feels great. So so welcome everyone. Welcome people who have not experienced NYAPRS and our conference live. Someday we will totally get back to that. So we are so glad that you've joined us today. There's a full day and evening of great people, authentic voices, and I just give a tremendous amount of kudos to all those people who are the presenters who have found their voice and truly share what's on their heart and passion for so many of us, right? So so I just want to say, from Kelly Davis, she shared a mantra, right? So may you be well. There are over 900 registrants, and so this platform is holding space for all of you today. So if you're not feeling 100%, we're going to hold space for you, and we're hoping that that you are well.
Excellent. That was beautiful. And good morning, everybody. Juan, my coqui from Puerto Rico, and myself, we are saying good morning to you. Good morning. And a big hello. Hello. Good morning,
I think
everybody.
if we look in the chat box, then we may be seeing it back.
Oh, there we go.
Yes,
it's coming back. It's coming back. Yeah, there we go.
Yes, that is a signature hello.
That's right. I want everyone to respond. Hello. We see it. Nice, nice. Beautiful. Good job, everybody. Look at the energy. Harvey, look at the energy here.
I get it. I'm feeling it.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. What can I say? I think Tracy said it all. It is, again, an honor, a privilege. I feel so lucky to be part of a member of this family, this organization that does so much for people in New York, but also impacts what other states do nationally. We are a voice for advocacy. We are a voice to encounter challenges, for debate, for transformation, for new paradigms, for evolution, and sometimes even a little bit of revolution. NYAPRS is doing it all. So I thank you for allowing me to be part of this team and to be able to put such an excellent conference. Today is going to be as good, if not, we might even top what we did on Tuesday. I don't know. You let us know. It's up to you. You are our mirror. You tell us if it makes sense, if it doesn't make sense, what we need to change, what would you like more of, what would you like less of. It's up to you. And as we say good morning today, please put on the chat box what region you are representing. Are you from the city? Are you from Long Island? Are you from the northern area of New York? Are you from Plattsburgh? Are you from Lake Placid? Let us know. Are you from Western New York? Are you from Niagara Falls? I love that area, Niagara Falls. Are you from Buffalo? Are you from Syracuse? Are you from Binghamton? Are you from the Finger Lakes? Let me ask you, do you live in Watkins Glen? Put it there. We want to see. If you live in Watkins Glen, I want to see it right there on the chat box. You might be from Brooklyn. You might be from the Bronx. I think Harvey and I, we know a few people from the Bronx. Judge is from the Bronx, right? Jira used to be from the Bronx. You know, we know a few heroes from New York City. How about Westchester? Are you from White Plains? You know, are you from Yonkers? Let us know. We want to know. You know, are you from Albany? Are you from Albany? We don't know that. Put it here. You know, so as we continue to say good morning, we want to see that. Thank you, everybody. Harvey, how are you doing?
Louis, I'm doing well, and thank you. Hi, Tracy, and hi, Louis. What a great beginning, and thanks again for your just great leadership on this whole conference. Folks, we've never had this kind of leadership from the chairs, and even what you see, the design, the theme of Rise Up really came from Tracy, and the theme of Unity in the Hands really came from Louis, and many of the events that you'll see or have seen really come from them, and our tremendous staff. And I really want to acknowledge Eileen and Ruth and Daniela and Len, who can't be with us today, but we're all holding him very dear to us, throughout the day today. So I want to welcome just everybody. I was looking at some comments from yesterday, and I hope it just gives us a sense of how you feel. You were saying, I feel like I'm here with you all. I've always wanted to attend, but was never able to. I'm so glad that I came to this one. I feel like I'm home. And home and family is really what we're about. We're a big tent for many, many years, room for everybody. And we're so glad 1,000 of you are joining us at some point throughout the conference. We'll look for posted PowerPoints and recorded versions of the webinars, and be ready for the rest of the program. If you have hopefully your program, but you'll see we'll be following up with a keynote, a very timely keynote, all hands on deck, Black Lives Matter. We'll have a round of workshops at 1:15, another round of workshops at 2:45. We're gonna close at 4 o'clock, but then we're gonna come back and invite you into our evening program, where we'll have the comedy show. We won't have a live comedy show because we weren't able to work that out, and our comic wasn't able to work that out, but he's going to be on for a few minutes, and we'll be showing recordings. Please join that. We'll have open mic with Mike Skinner. We'll have an honoring circle with Lauren Spiro and Rita Cronice. We'll have a film, James Baldwin's I Am Not Your Negro. So we're really trying to capture, the workshops, the presentations, the evening programs. We really want you to feel what it's like to be part of our family and the celebration that's our conference, even though we couldn't do it in person. Our hope is we'll all welcome you back home in a year from now at one of the hotels. So I don't know if we're ready to open up into the next event here. No, we have a few more minutes. So do you want to offer any other comments?
I think, yeah, just really quick, as you're talking about the evening program, everything in the evening program is solid. I just want to make a quick point about the film, because I saw it twice already. I Am Not Your Negro by James Baldwin. James Baldwin, and we know this, I'm just being rhetorical now, one of the underrated geniuses of our country, brilliant, understood his history, our history, where he was at the present, and was very prophetic about the future. So, for those of you who might not be able to join the other workshops, but have time to see this film, I highly recommend it. Again, James Baldwin is such a powerful historical figure in the history of our country. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you, Louis. And just throughout this whole day, making sure that you're, hydrating and stretching and moving, right? So we've got a lot to take in today in our minds and in our hearts. But just know that it's important to move and to stand and to stretch, right? So just there's lots of great things about today. I also want to do a shout out to we have a cultural exhibit, Zoom room. So we would have a room each year at the annual conference, and there are so many people that have contributed to that room in regards to their culture, their traditions. We all bring something to this world, right? And this community. And so there are some really neat trinkets and some great things that that we've collected over the years. Very precious cultural opportunities, and an opportunity for you to share. When we do go live again, you may have some things that you can share. So please click on that link and check it out. There's just lots of heart and soul in that room too.
So thank you both. I think we're heading into our first program, which is a plenary program. So I'm going to ask Celia and Jeff and Chaku to turn on your cameras. And I'm looking too for Jerome and Hawk. Morning, Chaku. Good to see you. Morning, Celia. You could unmute yourself, Celia, and Chaku, you too.
Do you see me, Harvey? Let me see my
I
picture.
do.
Okay, why don't I see it? Okay. All
right, we just need Jeff. Jeff, you want to unmute and put your camera on?
I'm making an attempt to do so. It's telling me that the host has to allow me.
Okay, Eileen, if you could allow Jeff in, if that's an issue there.
Here we go.
There you go. So we're waiting. Thank you, all three of you, for joining us. This is such an important discussion, and you're really the right people to have it. And we're waiting for Hawk Newsom and also Jerome Wright. So maybe I'll just give some opening comments, and then hopefully they'll be here by then. So NYAPRS has made criminal justice and racism a top priority, both of those topics, in the last few years. And in the policy front on criminal justice, we've worked very closely with the entire community, and particularly the African-American community, in a number of areas, particularly around solitary confinement, and which is vastly overpopulated by people of color, and particularly African-Americans. Too many people arrested, too many people killed, too many people tortured in solitary confinement. So that's a high priority for us. So several years ago, we were able to work with groups and put restrictions on how many people with major mental health conditions could be put in solitary, but way too many. I think there were like 900 at last count right now. Right now, 900 people with mental health conditions suffering in the box. A room the size of an elevator with a small window, and you're there 23 hours a day. That's been a high priority, and you can see why for us. And again, it ties so strongly with racism, because the overpopulation of African Americans and people of other color in the criminal justice system. Racism itself and cultural competence or humility is a real priority for NYAPRS too. So you'll see, you heard about the exhibits, the cultural competence at our conference has always been intimate. It could not exist. It would not be what it is without those things, without the fashion show, without the exhibit, without the bash, and just the whole feeling of it, the music. So that's intertwined throughout the program, and the Cultural Competence Committee always is looking for interested parties. We'll try to put that on a bit later to invite you to come on. So several years ago, we were at NYAPRS looking to do a mental health march. Felt like we hadn't done that. And then we decided, in the wake of all the pain that was visited on us in the last 3 or 4 years, that all groups needed to come together. It couldn't just be about a small mental health group. So Doris Schwartz from inside our group organized a meeting in downtown New York City at the Human Rights Campaign. And who came to, we had groups from the Human Rights Campaign there. We had groups, we had Latinx ministers, Anti-Defamation League, Jewish people. We had people from mental health and independent living organizations. We had the Women's March And we had any number of groups, National Action Network, but we also had a connection to Black Lives Matter and of Greater New York and Hawkins. And so that led us to the connection with Hawk, where he then wound up giving a keynote at our conference a few years ago in a panel with people from the Human Rights Campaign and the Consumer Survivor Movement. And it was a really well-received speech. So we stayed in touch. And in recent weeks, by the way, you know, as you well know, we've been so watching what's happening in Rochester, where Chaco is, and just the abysmal, outrageous murder of Daniel Prude, and the intertwining of criminal justice and racism again. We can't ignore that anymore. Last week, we organized a joint statement. Thanks to Chaco, we did it with For New York, who are the people in addiction recovery in New York, and people with physical disabilities also joined us. So we issued a statement to the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle, and we'll continue to, if they don't print it, we'll find a place where it gets printed. But, you know, today's panel is really part of it. I'm hoping we'll see Hawk shortly, and we may have to start without him. But, you know, our panel here is really a group of national leaders and state leaders. Hawk is national, Chaco is national, C has been national, Jeff ought to be national if he's not. And Jerome is really an excellent, I don't know, Jerome, are you able to come on with the video? I see you're trying to connect to audio. And Eileen, I don't know if you can help here in terms of reaching out to Jerome. So anyway, we're really, this panel is meant to really dig deep into the tough conversations, and we hope we do. We kind of hope that we all get uncomfortable. I'm prepared to be uncomfortable about it, because we're looking at racism inside ourselves, inside society, inside the, hello, Jerome, inside, you know, throughout all the systems, mental health system, criminal justice system. And we want to examine it from a personal point of view and a systemic point of view. We want to talk about white privilege. We want to talk about, you know, what we can do each day from this point. I mean, there's no putting the issue of racism back into the bottle. It is out, and it's going to stay, and it's in front of us every day, and that's damn good. So anyway, this panel is going to get started, and maybe I'd like to ask each of you to introduce yourselves before we get into it. So can we start with Chaco?
Oh, sure. It's my honor. Hi, everyone. My name is Chaco Mathai. I'm currently living in Rochester, New York with my family. We just moved from Washington Heights 2-3 weeks ago and are now here. And I'm grateful to be part of the panel. I identify as a survivor, ex-patient in the movements, and, you know, for about 34 years now. And I've been, you know, like Harvey said, had the good fortune to be, you know, mostly because of Harvey's connecting me to all of these great people. Got a chance to be raised by the movement as a teenager. And Celia and others have really just mentored me all the way to be part of, you know, international, national, and local and statewide movements. So thank you.
Jeff, do you want to say hi? I'm looking for Hawk's number, so forgive me if I seem inattentive.
It's okay. Jeff Mcqueen, I'm executive director with the Mental Health Association, Nassau County, and we're a not-for-profit agency that works in a predominant community of color. And our mission has always been about the rights and advocacy of individuals who are trauma survivors. I myself identify as Chaco as a survivor of the movement, and it's always just been prevalent for us to be in the way, I would say, of injustice, of social injustice, and fighting for the rights of individuals so that they can live in the community of their choice without any stigma or without any injustice preventing them from having what anyone else should have.
Thank you, Jeff. How about you, Celia?
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much, Harvey, for having this panel. My name is Celia Brown, and I work for the Office of Mental Health, Office of Consumer Affairs. And I am, over 25 years, been a part of the Consumer Survivor movement. As Chaco said, I was raised from that movement too. And now I find myself giving advice to others when I was looking up to like Judy Chamberlain and Howard Harp and different people. And now I'm that person helping others. I have been particularly interested in racism and the intersections of all our different groups. You know, people with psychiatric histories, people with disabilities, the LGBTQIA community, and other advocates through Surviving Race. And I'm just very passionate on how we can work together to eliminate racism in our society and that people can live safely in their community.
Thank you. And Jerome? You want to say hi, Jerome?
Yes. I got to unmute many of these Zooms, so you think I'd be old hat at this by now, but it's always find myself doing the Chinese movie thing, lips moving, but nothing coming out. My name is Jerome Wright. I am, my paid position right now is I am the statewide organizer for the Campaign for Alternatives to Isolated Confinement, which is a campaign to halt solitary confinement campaign, which is to end the punitive use of solitary confinement in all its forms in the jails and prisons in the state of New York, and to create a more humane alternative to those draconian things that we still use to punish people. I am in effort for full transparency. I am formerly incarcerated, having spent 30 plus years of my life in prison for a crime which I did commit, a murder I did commit as a young man at the age of 18, which does not excuse my behavior, but it wasn't until about 15 years after my incarceration for that crime that I began to, what they say, become woke and learn about myself, my history, why I was there, and what I needed to do to change the trajectory of my life, and to those who would suffer just like I did because we did not know, and we allowed ourselves to be played into a system of racism and oppression and subjugation that is codified in law and upheld as something as true, but because it's legal, don't make it right. And so for the past 30 plus years, I've been trying to be on the front lines of the fights for racial equality and everything, but predominantly criminal justice. And I believe that once we look at each other as humans and not as racial designations, then we will end racism, and that's the only time.
Jerome, thank you so much. I feel the outrage when you talk about this. I feel the outrage about not seeing the HALT law being adopted and how cruel that was, and how dignified and how relentless the campaign is. I have worked in advocacy for 27 years, and I've never, ever seen a campaign, a coalition like that. Proud to be a part of it, never give up, hunger strikes, trying to be arrested, never say die, up every week, never seen anything, and for good reason, because they know everything they do is an effort to get people who are suffering, like Jerome did, out of that box, and to end that forever in New York. And we've been dealt in a cruel way by both houses and the governor's office. And we're not done. We're not done at all. So Hawk, if we can bring you on camera, I'd love to introduce you and have you introduce yourself.
Can you see me? Hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm loving the purple shirt. I see great minds think alike there, Harvey.
There you go.
All right. Well, I am dropping my phone. Okay. I'm Hawk Newsom. I am the co-founder of Black Lives Matter Greater New York. I've been involved in this movement, the movement for Black Lives, since its inception. I would love to talk about my history and what I've done in this movement. I've worked with every family from Trayvon to Freddie Gray to Eric Garner, and a lot of the more recent cases. We took a trip down to Minnesota. We supplied monies to organizers in Kentucky over the past few months, and all the way down to, you know, us being out there last night providing people with waters. I think my heart is no longer in marching anymore. Of course, I'll march when I have to, but I think now is the time to play chess. The enemy, which is our enemy, which is this system that is built and based in white supremacy and seeks to oppress just a wide range of people, is extremely organized. And I believe that now is the time for us to be organized. One of the things that we're pushing for today, we actually sent out a press release this morning, and momentarily the governor's office will make an announcement endorsing what we promoted in that press and in that press release, and that is to bring leaders, community leaders, activists, clergy, and even the police to the table and describe what we want public safety to look like in the future. If what we're doing is successful, we will be abolishing the NYPD in New York City as we know it. Things that we've been saying for the last 4, 5, 6 years are now being palatable to the nation, but also to the politicians. And I thank everybody from NYAPRS for having me on. And I know that this is point specific to this demographic, to the people that I'm talking about right now. 5% of the calls that police receive are for violent crimes. The majority of the rest of those calls are from people experiencing episode of mental illness, okay? And what we're contending is that you do not need people responding to folks with mental health issues. You don't need the police to respond with guns, and these people do not need to be punished. Folks need therapy. Folks need love. Folks need individuals with understanding, right? Folks need individuals with understanding to go there and kind of help them through this situation. And this is very important when you look at the numbers, because 1 in 4 people murdered by the police, shot by the police in this country are folks with mental illness, okay? This is a very, 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 25% of the people who they are shooting, who they are killing, are sick and in need of assistance. So what we're proposing is that social workers be those first responders. This city spends $10 billion to employ 35,000 police officers, and it's not working. No one is happy with policing. The police aren't happy with what's going on. Activists aren't happy. Everyday citizens are just fed up with this system that is flawed, right? Why is this system flawed? Because it was built on oppressing Black people. Let's be real. The fugitive slave patrols were the first form of police in this country. The fugitive slave patrols were the beginning of policing in this country. Thank you, appreciate it. They were the beginning. I'm sorry. Truth be told, because Donald Trump called me treasonous and tweeted it, his folks have sent me over 1,000 death threats in maybe the last 2 months. So I live in hotels. I switch out cars every 2 months. I walk around with a bulletproof vest on, and that was somebody bringing me something from the hotel. Sorry for the interruption. So.
Wow.
Let me get back to where I was. Pretty much, we don't need cops in our schools. We need counselors in our schools. We need our folks with addiction, right, to be treated as such. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I'll be 5 years sober in February. Thank you so much. I'll be 5 years sober in February. A lot of people like, that's not a long time. For me, it has been the longest time. You know what I mean? So I understand this. You know, that addiction is a sickness, and it needs to be treated as such. Let's pivot to racism and white supremacy, right? When heroin and crack were, thank you, Ariel, when heroin and crack were ravaging our communities, okay, it was the war on drugs. When opioids started, you know, in the last few years, ravaging white communities, it became the opioid crisis. You understand? The difference is there was a war on us, but now when it's in the suburbs, these white folk need help. I'm not asking for any special treatment for Black people. I just want equity, right? I just want a level playing field. So what we're saying is, I know that it happened in Brooklyn. They had drug treatment courts. There needs to be more of those, right? We need to move toward a system where there is healing instead of punishment for everything. And like I said, with that press release and what we're doing today, we're actually pressuring Mayor de Blasio to call people to the table to reinvent public safety and look for new ways to make people obey the law. And I hope that y'all join me on that journey.
Thank you so much. So what a powerful beginning, Hawk, and welcome to our community. I know we've talked a little bit. You gave a great speech a couple of years ago. I'm glad you're staying with us because we need you very greatly. I do want to say one thing about replacement for police. Our groups, Hawk, have been really focused on what we call peer counselors, not so much clinicians, because we're looking for, to your point, we don't want to get into an illness-based approach so much as a recovery-based approach.
Right on.
And people who have been there, like all of you, everybody here in this call has been there. We're all in recovery. So we understand that experience is perhaps the most important. So this is not meant to diminish the clinicians, but we have a particular model, and had an emergency medical technician and a peer counselor gone out that night for Daniel Prude, maybe he would still be alive today. It is important to recognize that drugs played a role there, and I'm not sure about mental illness, but it doesn't matter. It still requires the same response. So I don't know where to open it up to. I'm going to actually ask Jerome to say a couple of words about, because our whole campaign is treatment, however that's defined, not torture. And Hawk was sort of speaking to that. This is not, of all things, a criminal justice issue, a punishment issue as it is in the prisons. It's supposed to be a rehabilitation approach. So could you share a little bit about what that brings up in you? And
Yes, certainly. First of all, thank you, Hawk, for that, man. We share your strength, man. Appreciate you. When people throw around words and call you treasonous and things like that, that means you're getting in their cause. So know that you're doing the right thing, because otherwise you'd be a non-entity. Yeah, this is a powerful time, and I think this is the time we need to do what's really. It's ironic we're at a mental health stage with it. We're talking about a lot of mental health issues, and I think that the issue that should be on the table is how much that racism is actually a mental health disease. I want you to think about it. I don't know what number we at, DSM 4, 5, 6 or whatever, but let's look at what we characterize as mental illness. It's like delusional, grandiose, psychotic, some of it is chemically induced, some of it is genetic. But just think about it. For somebody to think that they are better than you without knowing you just because of the pigmentation of your skin is to say that they could believe any other number of falsities in life that don't correspond to reality. Let's say, so that everybody that's 7'5" or older is a basketball player because they 7'5". And they're a good basketball player, and they have to be because they're 7'5". Like that's the line of demarcation, is that you 7'5", and anybody that's 7'5" can do a certain thing. And that is factually not correct. And if you think like that, and continue to think like, and what we say insanity is thinking the same thing and thinking you're gonna get a different result. Well, if you think that you're better than somebody based on the color of the skin, you think you can get a different result other than oppression, subjugation, the torture that goes with that, and the trauma, then you are delusional, because they go hand in hand. That is psychotic behavior, to believe that just because you were born with a certain pigmentation, that gives you any upper hand on any other person that was born the same way you were. You didn't come out special way. You know, you didn't come from another planet. You were born of a woman like everybody else is. And what makes you think by the color of your skin that you are better than somebody else?
Jerome, could you, it's so powerful. Could you talk a little bit from the point of view of somebody who's been in prison and is fighting to end solitary confinement about how racism shows up in prisons?
Whoa, man. Prison is the, Brother Hawk talked about the patrols, the slave patrols. Well, the slave patrols were made to put people in prison. So they go hand in hand too. So you catch the slave, then you in effect lock them back up. Then it was back to a plantation. Now it's back to a penitentiary or prison, or now the vernacular is correctional facility where no correcting goes on. But how that plays out there, listen, when you go to any facility in any state in this union, you're gonna find the demographics unequivocally slighted towards Black, Brown, Latinx, and indigenous people. That is by design. That's not a happenstance. We're not genetically predisposed to crime. And if you talk about crime and you don't talk about the crime generative factors like poverty, miseducation, discrimination, then you're only talking about half a story. And you know half a story is only a half truth, which is actually a full lie, right? So in prison, you have, look in solitary. In the state of New York, first of all, talk about mental health, 65% of the people in solitary confinement right now in the state of New York are diagnosed mental health. That's your new mental health facility, solitary confinement, number one. The worst thing you could do to a person with a mental health issue is to isolate them in a cell. But talking about racism, the numbers are, we are 13% Black and brown people in the state of New York, 50% in prison, and 60% in solitary confinement. When COVID hit prisons and jail, 81% of people who died in prisons and jails were Black and brown people, 81%. You want to talk about how prison is created and shows that racism exists? These prisons are put in these rural communities as lifebloods for those communities, the livelihoods they provide. A friend of mine and I stood up for one night from 11 to 3 or 4 in the morning, trying to count how many people and feed off of the criminal justice system, where people think of cops and judges and lawyers and DA. They think of those right off the top. They don't think about the guy who provides the toothpaste for the facilities and throughout the state. That's $1 million contract. They don't think about the people who provide vending machines, food for the people who come and visit, or the hotels in that community who live off of people coming up to stay weekends to visit their families because they can only get one visit and they have to juggle that. They're not talking about the cab drivers that you have to take from the bus place to the facility. All of these people's livelihoods depend on Black and brown people being locked up in prisons so that they can provide a living for them and their families.
Jerome, so powerful. I'm feeling that outrage again so strongly. You know, while we're on the topic of prison, let's talk about what gets you in prison, which is, again, the police. And Chaku, would you talk about what's happening in Rochester and broader? What are the issues that's bringing up? What's being proposed? Any of those topics?
Yeah, sure. So, hi everyone, and Hawk, great to see you, man. Thank you so much, and Jerome, thank you for sharing as well. You know, this, this experience, we're all so exhausted. I'm just looking at every single one of us on the screen right now, and to hear Hawk being, get a target on his back, already, once again at another level, and the risks that each of us and many of, especially.
Come on back, Shaka. We'll wait for you.
So I can't identify as a Black man. I'm an Indian man, born in Kuwait, came to this country, experienced xenophobia and racism from the get. In the streets of Rochester, have been struggling with my own reaction to all of that, which resulted, fast forward, with experiences of hearing voices, seeing things I couldn't see, not trusting anybody around me, having my guard up, using drugs to cope with all of those things, not having any of it work, mistrusting my own family eventually, even the family that had my back and loved me and wanted me, but I thought they were trying to kill me and poison my food. So the internal way in which all of these determinants get inside of us, and policing is one example that has just endured the whole process, as Hawk pointed out. There is one thing that we have learned, and that is that policing in general has a deleterious effect disproportionately on Black and brown communities, just in its very presence. The tools of policing are violent. The only resource that it shows up for is violence. And so to have, and Hawk laid it out in terms of the issues. And so Daniel Prude's murder, on the streets of our community in Rochester was and to have it be released on body cam, and only to find out, after all these months, it's happened in March, and now, we see it in September. We're all struggling with a sense of betrayal, a sense of loss and grief and outrage, of course, that we've had over the years, and every single circumstance that occurred. I mean, Hawk, came into my heart. I didn't even know about him until Deborah Danner died in New York City, in 2016, and to see Hawk's willingness to step, into that space, a space that was oftentimes very confusing, right? To kind of talk about mental health and substance use and that sort of thing, and to bring Black Lives Matter into that space and recognize that intersection in the same way that we're in our movement finally recognizing the need for an anti-racist framework in every aspect of our movement, in every aspect of our advocacy. It's been sliding off the table every time. And the consequences of that have happened in Rochester too. So that when we are actually needing Black and brown ex-patient survivors to show up at the table, there's not many of us there, because we've either been killed, all right, we've either been, forced into care, into treatment, or subjugated in one way or another under forced treatment, or criminalized, or community supervision, that speaking up would cause, a loss of many things, you know what I mean? Livelihoods. So those of us like me who have spoken up anyway, had the privilege of getting fired and then being able to get another job after a year, or, you know what I mean? Like, that happens too. But I don't have the target on my back that Hawk does, for example, right? So not everybody's willing to take those kinds of consequences, and it's hard. So first of all, we need to honor that. And so that's happening here in Rochester. So the groups here in Rochester are Black Lives Matter local. I'm not going to speak on behalf of those groups. I want to make sure that I'm centering them. That's one of the main things that I think has been important, making sure that our community listens to Black Lives Matter locally. Our group is called Free the People Rock here. So the organizers of Free the People Rock and Black Lives Matter work together and have organized the protests ever since September 2nd and a little bit before, quite a bit, of course, before that, after George Floyd. But I think the main thrust of our occupation of City Hall and all the works that we've been at in this place now has resulted in what Hawk just talked about as well, which is the rethinking of what policing ought to look like in Rochester, New York. and proposals for that as well statewide and joining New York City. They've reviewed and seen proposals from other cities, including the New York City proposal, as well as the CCIT, the Crisis Alternatives proposal, the statewide statements from you, Harvey, and for New York and Independent Living Movement to have an EMT peer response. There's a mental health, so there's a desire to have an alternative to police response, an alternative to calling 911, because my family right from the get knew not to call 911 when I was struggling. All right, that was just an assumption. Don't call 911 if I am struggling. And that's the only thing that, even when police showed up, they didn't tell them where I was, So the issue is, just to get to kind of where we are now, is the accountability of the existing system, the rethinking of that process. And now we're looking for people to start representing at those places where the analysis can actually happen. Because right now, yeah, we've been in the streets protesting, and that's one, the attention of the state attorney general to hold the city accountable, to look at the NYPD, the roster PD. That needs to happen, but now the strategy has to move to what does it really mean to have public safety? Because we pushed back even on the presence of policing in our community. There was a proposal for a new substation that's been pulled off, right? That's not happening now because of the protests that occurred. So I think I'm so proud of the organizers. I also just want to finally, before I forget, thank, I think you have a couple, leaders in NYAPRS that have showed up in Rochester. Matthew Petit, who's on your board, Cameron Farish, who's an incoming board member, have been also showing up right in the protests as people in recovery, recognizing their relationship to the movement and to this intersection. We have an emotional support team we're all a part of. So I'm just grateful for that as well. And I think we need to keep calling on each other and our movement to show up for these, not just the protests, but for what it means to be an anti-racist movement, and to start looking at policies that actually are producing racist outcomes. And I'll give you one example: forced treatment. Involuntary outpatient commitment is sunsetting this year once again, and that is one of the key ways in which inequities against Black and Brown are perpetuated. At the end of the day, Black and Brown communities are the people that get forced into care the most in New York State. And so if that is that's why we don't want to see mental health professionals as the main solution alone, because it's just another avenue to force people into care. We don't need to force people into care that we don't want. We don't want to be forced to sit by fires that don't warm us. We want to build our own, right? And create new strategies that actually work. So I'll end there. Let's take a look at those policies that create the inequities, and that will create an anti-racist approach.
I want to get back to Hawk later, but Hawk, I remember you writing protests were not what ultimately helped Martin Luther King and will not ultimately help us. It's changes in law. And I think there's the Black Act, other things I've read from you about it, and I want to return to that. I just want to say to Chaco's point about 911. What I was told by someone was when they got a call about somebody who was running in the street naked, breaking glass, and yelling, that should have tipped them off that was PCP. A PCP, I've read it, it's a standard symptoms assumed with that, and a medical person should have been sent out, not a police officer. That was a medical answer to an issue. All the reading I've done is it's a medical issue, not a police issue. So,
Harvey.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to say, but I want to get with you soon because I'm up here in Buffalo, so we've been sharing some of the resources back and forth. They've been coming over here. We've had some significant problems in Buffalo as well as Rochester. We've been sharing things, and one of the things that we came out of this with is that the cops police and patrol our community, and they serve and protect the others. And that's where we got to get away from this policing model that they have now, because that's what we have. But I want to say thank you for what you're doing over there, and that we have been working together, and I will see you soon on that side of the fence. Yeah.
Got it.
So Celia, you've been working for years and have this Facebook group that is just mushroomed and just has its own, without money, its own power. And it brings together the intersection, and you've been a figure in the movement for years, and now you're really expanded into these intersectionalities. Can you talk about that?
Sure. In 2014, when Eric Gardner was killed by the police, and Michael Brown in Ferguson, I felt that I needed to do something. So I brought some movement leaders, white, black, and brown, together to say, "Hey, we're a movement, and we could work to change this, because we've been doing this work for a long time." And we came up with Surviving Race. I also was thinking, I have a 24-year-old black son, and what if something happens to him? What if this happens to my nephews, my cousins? And, there's some shame in saying that you were stopped by the police. Like, I found out maybe a couple of months ago, my son was stopped for nothing. Most of you know him. He's a good man, and he was stopped because he's black. So I worry about that, because I don't want my son to end up being killed, and then I'll be doing the activist thing. I'll be with Black Lives Matter. I really am afraid of that. And so I'm also afraid of how people of color and family members who call the police and they're seeking help and they don't get help. What they get is the police coming in and not really knowing how to handle the situation. And that's a problem. So I feel like we have so many services out here that we have developed over the years. Peer-run services, recovery-oriented service. Why isn't that out there? Why is the first thing, let me call 911, let me go to the hospital? We have to do better in letting the public know that there are wonderful services that we have created over the years. And I just think that that's important. The other thing, I want to backtrack a little bit. I want to say that, in my opinion, racism is not a mental illness, because what it does is it puts it on the person who's experiencing a mental health condition. We did not create that. I mean, it's a racial trauma. That's a new language. And so, every day when I talk to my mom was a part of the civil rights movement. And, she experienced not sitting on the back of the bus, drinking from a certain, water fountain. And this has really affected her for years, but she talks to me as if it happened yesterday. It's still there. The scars, the racial scars are still there. And I don't know what I would do if I had to go through that, but we talk about it, we strategize, she gets her feelings out. And I think that a lot that's happening is racial trauma. And I want to say, as the only Black woman on this panel and woman on this panel, is I am very disturbed at what happened to Breonna Taylor. I can't even sleep well. I don't know what to do. And Black women are under attack as Black men. And so we have to really, why is that? And really work together to stop that from happening.
Thank you, Celia, so much. I just want to point out, and when it comes to Chaco's point about involuntary outpatient commitment, NYAPRS has been, I think, the lead force in New York for 20 years since the law was passed, to keep it from, we haven't been able to take it down, but we've been able to keep it from expanding or being made permanent. That's really important. I also see in the chat box that people are challenging my assessment of what was going on with Daniel Prude and what the response should have been, and I think that's great. I'm not an expert. I can just tell you from what I've read and people have told me, it's a complicated issue. We can disagree. I'm really open to be taught on this issue, so I just want to say that. So Jeff, please join in the conversation. There was a number of connections I thought of you, so please share.
Thank you very much. And again, this is a very important conversation, and it's also an honor and a privilege to share this platform with all of you. I've watched all of you work and over the years, and it's just an honor, right? So Chaco, you mentioned that if you look at the faces, you can tell that we're tired. And I think what you see is battle fatigue, right? This has been an ongoing battle with racism. And what you see is just the fatigue. tired is not synonymous enough to what I'm experiencing. I think with Celia and Jerome and Hawk, I think it's far beyond tired. I think we're just in this place of battle fatigue. If you look at the history of where we are, and Celia, I agree 150%. When we look at the history of substance use disorder, if we look at individuals who've been diagnosed with a mental illness, these are not learned traits. These are not things that any of us had any control over, right? These things, like, we don't choose to be addicts. We don't choose to be schizophrenic. We don't choose to be depressed. This is not a choice. This is not something I went to school and learned. This is not something my mother taught me. This is something that happened to me, right? But when we look at racism, see, racism's a choice. Racism's a choice. You know what I mean? It's not anything, it's simply, if you put two children in a room of any color, if you put two children in a room from birth and they grow up, they're going to grow up friends. They might dislike each other for things that they have done to one another, but not because of the color of their skin. That won't even become a concern, right? They wouldn't even know any different. In fact, they might be surprised if they saw someone else of another color, because they'd be like, oh, I thought everybody was just black and white. I didn't know there were Asians in the world. I didn't know that there was these other, right? These are things that we learn. This is a learned behavior, And if we look at the history, and this is where the fatigue comes in. If we look at the history, we were all born into this. We didn't create this. We didn't start this. We were enmeshed into the middle of this society that was founded on this flawed foundation. Right? Like, we had no choice in it. We didn't put a brick in it. We were enmeshed into it. We were born, and the platform that was handed to us was already one of racism, right? And social injustice. And for its own agenda, obviously, right? And so what we end up experiencing is this mass conditioning, right? That makes it okay to be this way. Like, this is fine. And when we get individuals in office who speak freely about hate, right, or who speak freely about wanting to segregate, then it only offers individuals who believe in that system to come to life, right? It awakes the giant, so to speak, And so then what we end up realizing is that not only is there this mass conditioning, but the effects turn out to be generational, right? So that the trauma that my grandmother had experienced goes into my mother's generation, into my generation, to my son's generation, right? Like, it becomes transgeneral. It just keeps on moving. And it has its ebbs and flows based on the Hawk Newsoms that arise, right? Based on the individuals who are willing to get in the way of this injustice and say, listen, we're not having this. And I'm just, oh man, the term martyr, right? It's sad that we have to lose so many lives for so many people to finally get to a place where they're like, I'm not sitting down anymore, right? Because it's happened before. We protested and rioted, and then we sat down. It went away. Okay, we're good. It's fine. No problem. Then it happened again, and we get up and we do it again, and then time goes on, and my life, my children, my job, I got to get back to this. I got to do this thing. But now it's gotten to a point where it's just so frequent and it's been so long that the fatigue has taken place. You're looking at a society that is dealing with battle fatigue. We're tired of fighting for something that shouldn't even exist.
Right.
Harvey, I just wanted to mention to Hawk, thank you for all the work you're doing and the threats you have. I feel that, and I just hope that you will be safe. I really do. I want to say that.
Thank you so much. Just pray for me.
I will pray for you, definitely. I want to say that we a lot of times people are hearing voices. We have created some steps like the Healing Voices Network that nobody knows about in the public. There are ways that people can be supported and healed that goes beyond the medical model. And Hawk, I want you to have these, I'll send them to you and to Harvey, these resources. We all have them, but it needs to be out there. My concern is when families call and they're not a part of the mental health system and their loved one is experiencing emotional distress or hearing voices or visions, they don't know where to go. And I want them to have those resources. And I think you are the one that will be able to pass that on to some of the families that you work with. Because we want a connection of our services, and we want the families and the public to know that this exists and it works.
Yeah.
It really
It goes
works.
further, Celia, because not only do we want them to know that it exists, but we need them to know that if the judicial system, if this policing, if this system is failing you, then don't call them, call the people who will act directly on it and can give you a good response and a better outcome. Because we don't show up armed.
And we're all, Hawk, that's true, Jeff. We all here are resources. Harvey, Chaku, Jerome, all of us are resources that you can call on.
Yeah.
For things that are going on. I hope I speak for everyone when I say that.
Thank you, Steve. I want to point out, too, the Cultural Competence Committee, and if you email me at harveyr@nyaprs.org, harveyr@nyaprs.org, I'll connect you with that committee. They're strong, they're moving. Jeff is a co-chair, and we need you. So we've only got about 15 minutes for you and maybe 15 minutes for the audience to weigh in. So let me start with Hawk. What can we do? What are the next steps? Jeff is saying we get tired, we get complacent, we sit back. What's going to really mobilize us? What do you think we can do now to see change in the most fundamental level? And whether it's legal strategies or protests or any of the media work, you do all that, I know. What do you think?
Absolutely. Well, Brother Jeff, I'm with you, right? Like yesterday, after Breonna Taylor, I won't use my colorful language. I was like, forget a march. I'm not marching anywhere today. I'm tired. I'm too tired to go out here and march, right? Like there has to be something bigger. And that's when we decided to release the statement. The governor just spoke on it at his press release. Somebody from my email just teamed me. So now we are creating a space for the talk about mental health, right? And that component to where we are going to present solutions to the city. But, you know, I said, listen, I'm not marching. I support everybody. I love everybody. You don't want to go out there and march, but marching ain't it right now. Going inside the Black community is where I'm going. And now when you say when I say I'm going inside the Black community, I am categorizing my Afro-Latina brothers and sisters in that, okay? Going into our communities and teaching our people, feeding our people, and training our people, teaching financial literacy, what our history really is, because this country would have you believe that our history started in change. They'll never tell you we invented the wheel in Africa. We invented algebra in Africa. They won't tell you about the architecture in Egypt that has never been recreated. They'll make you believe that that Egypt ain't even in Africa, right? You think about places like, you know, beautiful, just all this beauty that's in Africa, and this country has taught us that it's all savages, or it's all poverty and jungles, and Africa's absolutely purely beautiful, but that's the history aspect. When we start talking about food during COVID, my team and I raised maybe $50,000, and while people were quarantining, we packed up Suburban and was delivering food to 150 doors per day. People who couldn't go out or were too afraid to go out to stand on lines, we took food to them, okay? This time right now is about action. We're talking about calling out the mayor of New York City to put forth a new vision for policing in conjunction with community groups, enforcing the city council to pass it. We have to move ahead. There is no other way other than direct action. I can't march anymore. I've been marching for the last 5 years. I shut down the George Washington Bridge last week for what, though? To promote legislation. That's the Black Act. If you go to www.blackopportunities.com, you'll see all of our legislative recommendations. If you look in at that document and you say, well, hey, Hawk, I think this would be nice, email it to us and we'll add it. This is a living, breathing document. And I saw the good brother had on a Hulk solitary confinement shirt. Who was that?
Part of the bill. That's in the bill.
Hey, right on. I see you, brother Jay, Romy Rome. I see you. Well, that's something that we incorporated into Black Opportunities and promoted that internationally. So right now it's about action. Let's start putting on our lobbying hats so we can go to Albany and take it to these people. Let's start looking at local elections and seeing what we can do there. But most importantly, let's get in the hood. Let's go into the communities and establish programs where we can uplift our people. We got a lot of people like us with big hearts and very interesting, triumphant stories. But we need everyday folks. We need 9 to 5, come home, play with your kids, eat dinner, wake up tomorrow, do it again type folks in the streets with us. And to do that, you have to show them that they have that there's a space for them in this race. And you do that by going to them, by teaching them, by feeding them. Right now, really quickly, we are looking for a warehouse in Atlanta so that we can do this. And we're looking to purchase a building in New York. We do not have a dime to purchase this building. And we're going to start a GoFundMe. And I guarantee you by the end of the year, we'll raise $1 million to buy a building in the Bronx, to do everything we ask the government to do to help our people. We're going to do the shit ourselves. I'm sorry, my colorful language. We're going to shame them into doing the right thing for our people. We are fully moving forward. The Black Lives Matter movement has been about raising awareness, but Black Opportunities is about liberation and community empowerment. And lastly, I leave this for last because people take this and run with it, self-defense. We train people to defend our communities, to police our own communities, police our communities from entities within our communities to seek to harm our people, as well as the police.
Thank you so much, Hawk. I want to leave time for questions and so I'm going to put the rest of you on the spot. The question is, what should we do? Hawk gave a number of examples. Can each of the panelists give one thing briefly so we can get to questions? So Jeff, what's one thing that you think we can all do for who are on the call now and can hang up off the call and say, I'm going to do that?
So I think that there are already traditionally a lot of platforms that we've already established for movement. And I think that if you really aren't sure what you want to do, but you want to get involved, I think the thing to do would be to reach out and get involved with what's already moving. Numbers of power, and we're already doing it, right? So we look forward to having you in Albany with us. We look forward to having you do the things that we need to be able to do, handing out clothes, feeding people, all the things Hawk is talking about. Like, these things are already in place. So if you really want to know what you can do, we could use more help at what we're already doing.
Jeff, I want to thank you for paying for the bus that brought the Cultural Conference Committee up to join the HALT people during that campaign. Chaco?
So as Hawk mentioned in the Black Act, I think ending the involuntary outpatient commitment order into the Black Act would be a great thing to have, because that is the direct correlation between the capacity to be forced into care and whether I choose care or not. You know what I mean? So people will be more likely to get some help if, just because I hear voices, I'm not going to be forced into some kind of care or some kind of situation. So that's one. Secondly, is to shift whatever group you're involved in, whether it's an organization that's locally or statewide, nationally. to make sure that that group has an anti-racist identity and strategy. It's no longer acceptable, and it's never been, but if you think it's been acceptable to be a non-racist or be a neutral position on any of this, it's not going to work. It needs to be an intentional statement, and beyond statements, but intentional plan to actually be a part of changing conditions and policies that create inequities. That's the main idea. Focus on the disproportionate impact. You know, when Hawk said all he wants is equity, we got to listen to that. That's what it takes. And lastly, decenter yourself. If you're not part of the Black and brown community, recognize how you can be a co-conspirator, an ally that is part of that community, and not jump out in front of people all the time. I think that's been the natural tendency. I've watched it. I've had to encourage people and actually ask, push people back, who have jumped out in front of that. The messaging, the analysis needs to come from the very Black communities that Hawk was just talking about, right? So, the same thing is true in Rochester. I need to help people back off and let people do that analysis so they can come forward with what they know they need. You know what I mean? And then support that. And we don't have enough of us doing that, is what I'm trying to. We have more people second guessing each other. That's it.
Chaku, thank you for pushing us back, I know, and me back in the beginning, and making that point and making sure Rochester and Black and brown people were in the lead. We want to be helpful. We're going to keep trying to figure out how to be helpful. Celia, what's one thing?
Well, I have two things. Okay. Well, one thing I want to mention, I know that Chris Coyle is on this webinar. 2 years ago, we had a table at the National Action Network annual conference, and I thought this was a really good partnership. Putting out resources that the Office of Consumer Affairs is doing, putting out resources on benefits and stuff that people don't get unless you're in the mental health field, and you can get this information. So I thought that was very helpful. We had conversations. So I wanted to put a plug in that if we could do that. Two, I think Surviving Race is going to be definitely working with Black Lives Matter and with you, Hawk, and, for all these different intersections that we have. And I hope at some point I can help get you some resources so that you can present them when you're in your meetings of all the great work that our movement has done for decades. I just think it's very important. And it's important for Black families who are dealing with people, don't understand hearing voices and acting strange and things like that, and how to work with that. It's complex, but we can work with it. So also, we're going to look at your opportunities, blackopportunities.com, and put some information into that may be needed. So, Hawk, thank you so much. Harvey, everyone that will what you're doing, I really appreciate even being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Celia. Jerome, you got 2 minutes. People are chatting, and we want to get them in.
2-minute warning, always for me. I just want to say that, Jeff, thanks for the help with the Hawk campaign. I'll say this, if there's 318 people on this, and I guess taking us out maybe 300 and something, if they really want to do something other than talk about racism, you want to do something about it, the Hawk campaign is at the precipice of getting passed. We need a little bit more support. The other campaigns on here, Black Lives Matter, need every single body and every single resource we can muster to support them. Get involved. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, since Harvey put this together, if he could be a clearinghouse for those of you who are listening right now to go on and say, I want to be a part of something, one of these campaigns, and this is what I'm interested in, or this is what I can do, or what I can offer, and he could get that information to us, then you will be doing something proactive, you will be doing something committed, and you will be standing up on principle that you're not just about talking about it anymore. Because let me tell you something, either part of the problem or part of the solution now. There's no more middle ground. This is not, there's no gray area. When they talk about black and white, that's where we're at right here with this thing. So you're either part of the problem or part of the solution. There's no middle ground. Get part of the solution. Step up and stand up with some of us. I'm not saying just stand up with one of us. Send an email to Harvey saying, listen, I want in. Send me wherever I need to be helped. I'm an infantry soldier. I don't care what battlefield I'm fighting on. I'm ready for the war. If you can do that, for 300 people on here, if we can get half of them to do that, that'll be 150 people more that we got in this battle, 150 more resources, 150 more people with spheres of influence of their own that we could marshal towards everything that we're trying to do, because this is a comprehensive battle and we need to win them together, but they're gonna have to be fought one at a time. So join us. If you want to get down, step up, stand out, stand up for something. Do that now. Harvey, I'm sorry putting you on the spot like that.
No. That's just where I want to be. That's just where I want to be. That's my one. I marched, but I said, you know, the Halt Bill's what I want to work on. Not marching for a couple of hours. I want to get people out of prison and solitary. And I can't think of anything worse. So yes, please email me. You know, we've tried to be the mental health wing of the CAKE campaign, but we don't have enough response. Jeff sent some people up, but you're not responding as much. We'll reach out more to you and we'll follow this campaign. They're our leaders. I just do what they tell me. And so please join us and watch the e-news. If you go to our website, sign up for what's called the e-news. We talk about this all the time. And one last thing is you don't have to come to Albany. It's all about Zoom half the time anyway. So you don't have to get in a bus or spend a dime. You can just join the fight and CAKE will tell us what to do. So, Ruth, are you there?
Yes, I am.
You have maybe 2 or 3 questions that are the most compelling that you found?
Yeah, you know, Jeremy and Ariel and some others ask very similar questions. How peers or social workers responding, you know, what's your thoughts on how they can have an intervention? And so if they're responding to crisis calls, we can stop not only the violence from police, but what are your thoughts about how they can steer individuals away from hospitalization or forced treatment or other institutional responses?
I'm going to chat back, so one of you jump in, please.
Jeff, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. So I think that one of the biggest things that we recognize is that Chaku's and Celia's and Jeff's in the room, we know the resources that are in our community, right? We know who's doing what. And so it wouldn't be hard pressed to be able to make sure that the responding peers and social workers know where the community respites are, know where the services are, to be able to refer people to link them to care without it being a hospital. You know, there are several peer respite beds throughout the state now. So, you know, I think that it wouldn't be hard pressed to be able to make sure that they had the resources and the information to be able to make sure that they were able to get support, even if it was to just make sure that peers were deployed mobily until beds became available to work with them day in and day out. You know, my team has never had a problem meeting people 7 days in a row in their own home to provide them respite where they live until a bed was available. So I think that the key would be just making sure that they had the resources of what's in their community. Shaku?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to say that the thing that I've struggled with understanding is why those of us who are part of Hearing Voices Network and facilitators and other groups, we don't see enough of them, more of them in more communities. I'd love to understand that more. I mean, Hearing Voices International and USA did acknowledge in their own organizational framework a lack of engagement of people of color. And so we started doing that more intentionally, talking about what are the differences and needs that in order to bring more of us forward to be able to talk about our experiences, but openly in our communities, and really change the way in which that happens. Because I think part of why people go to mental health professionals instead of thinking of the peer support options is that there's still lack of faith and confidence in us. And we need to talk about that directly, and address that. And I don't mind working in collaboration, but we need to build trust among those of us who are survivors and ex-patients in those communities. And I think part of it is not using euphemisms like peer necessarily, and really reminding people, no, we've been there. We're ex-inmates, ex-patients, survivors, and really help people see that. We know what we're talking about.
Can I get a quick answer to one question? What is the correct role for police? Because there are people that think we think there is no role, and they're all
There is none.
racist.
There simply is no role. Like, we're done. We're past that. We need new ways to make people obey the law. This system was founded on racism, and it perpetuates racism. Look at mass incarceration. Look at racial profiling. Look at the way Black people and brown people are subjugated and arrested. Police officers do not need to exist anymore. Now, there'll be reasons why we need people to protect us, but they won't be police officers. The age of policing is done. Just like the age of slavery came to a close, like the age of policing is done. And that doesn't make people unsafe. What makes people unsafe is extreme poverty. Extreme poverty makes people unsafe. If you look at neighborhoods with the highest murder rates, they have the highest unemployment rates. So let's divest from the police and invest in the community, and you won't have that desperation that makes people go out and commit these crimes. No police.
So thank you, Falk. One quick thing is, NYAPRS is going to do more webinars on this, so you all can have more comment. I'd love to do it regularly. Let me just one second. I'd like to do them regularly and have you join us, because there's so much more. You may not agree with everybody has said here. Let's keep the conversation going. Yes, Jerome.
No, I just saw a question in there, and somebody asked if all the panelists thought that every police officer was racist in America. And I couldn't let that go by without saying this. We are not talking about individuals right now. We're talking about systemic, structural, and institutional racism. That is the most insidious kind, because that kind of racism doesn't matter who's in control. You can have a Black face in control of a racist system, and it's going to perpetuate what it wants. So we don't care. We're not talking about individual cops. We're talking about a system of policing that is racist in nature. Everything that flows, it is like the fruit from the poisonous tree. You cannot have the fruit without the tree ain't gonna produce nothing but poison. And that's what policing, the way it's done now, is producing. Poisonous relationships, toxic environments, and deadly encounters for Black and brown people. That has got to stop. So you remodel that by, yes, we can police ourselves. We've always done it. If you look at our ancestral heritage, our villages, we didn't have cops. We didn't have police. We had designated elders and community members who are accountable to look after certain parts of the community and take care of it and guard it. You don't need police as they like I said, what they do now is police and patrol our community. They serve and protect others. We don't need them then.
I know I might ruffle some feathers with this, but I'm just gonna go ahead and say it, right? You think about Hitler, you think about Nazi Germany, and you think about all those soldiers who was rounding up the Jews, right? Some of those soldiers might have been nice people in their everyday life with good intentions to make Germany great again, but they still rounded up Jewish people and murdered them, okay? So just like all of them are bad, all police who perpetuate this racist ass system are bad.
So powerful.
I just want to say that I agree with the peer and social workers working together. I think what needs to happen is that there needs to be equity between peers and social workers. So it's not just, oh, let's just throw a peer in and they're going to have it on their backs to make this change. You know, this is what we have right now, and I'm hoping that we'll have more kind of resources. I agree with Chaku that we need some resources in our movement that deal with Black and brown people, like hearing voices. How is that? Anxiety is a big factor in the people of color community. How do they deal with that?
Thank you, Steve.
So, you know, the models are great, and how could we integrate and intersect with that? And so that's going to take some time to do.
No, at the risk of trying to be sort of, I was just saying to myself, the issue of who goes out is not a black or white issue, and I didn't mean it quite that way, but you know the phrase. It's maybe not be clinicians or, you know, we have to think about it as a community. I did read on the chat box that somebody said, let's not forget there that the peer community is not 100% non-racist as well. More questions, Ruth? I know we've been grabbing it ourselves. Do you have a couple of more?
You know, I just want to add a little bit more of what Tanya said that you were able to identify. It's essentially to continue the conversation on alternative to policing. So whether you're a peer, a social worker, or whoever you are in the helping professions, they are a microcosm of society. And so there's something deeper that we have to do. And what is that? People just don't know. But we're hoping that peers or other people in the helping profession, it's not a panacea. So how do we fix it really from the roots?
Well, I just wanted to ask also.
Chaku and then Jeff.
Yeah, just remember that in the system's very habit, even on your voicemails, you have call 911. We need to rethink that. That is not the answer, and you know, just like policing isn't the answer. And that there are ancestral ways in which we've colonized ourselves and our community. We've been colonized to think these are the ways to go. What Jerome was talking about was a free, liberated way of thinking about community. That is worth envisioning. Thank you.
Yeah, and I also want to point out that NYAPRS, and be humble about it here, where, you know, but there are NYAPRS board members, former staff calling in on the screen. And I say that only because let's use NYAPRS to really reach out, if only on the Hawk Bill. Let's take one step together. We're trying to be there. We have some entree there, so please do join us. One more question, Ruth?
No, a lot of agreeing and a lot of shout outs.
Okay. One last comment? Yeah.
Everyone's talking about 988 that's going to be coming. If that still turns to police, it's not going to help. All right. So in other words, if the path—
It's a suicide hotline, right? Suicide hotline.
Well, yeah, it's a suicide hotline and this overall just alternative to, you know, mental health engagement.
Okay.
But if there's still a policing component to it, I guess I just want to make sure you're all thinking about how to rethink that, you know, because that is the plan going forward in a couple of years. So.
Yeah. So Shako, you know, I'm on board with you like 100%, man. And the fact of the matter is that if I were dealing with, so I don't bring my car to McDonald's to get the oil change, right? So we need to make sure that we categorize things appropriately and that we're really bringing about a strong sense of awareness in our community of where things belong. Right? Because we've gotten into this place where we've separated so much of our society to give the government so much control that now it does everything for us, even separate our families, right? It's raising our children, it's stopping me from disciplining my own child. It wants to do it itself. Like everything is becoming faction to this place where the government will run it and take care of it for me. And I just go to work and pay my taxes and be fine with that. So I don't bring my car to McDonald's to get the oil change, and nor should I be bringing my son to the police officer because he has an addiction. I shouldn't be bringing my son who's hearing voices to the police because he's dealing with hearing voices, right? So we need to make sure that things are categorized and put into groups and being serviced by the people who's supposed to service it. Right? I'm taking my car to the mechanic. you know? So we need to, and this is, listen, and this is an awakening of our community and breaking of the conditioning that's been pressed upon us. Remember, I said earlier, we didn't create this, we was given it. This was handed to us, right? Now, does that mean it's not our responsibility? No, it is our responsibility, right? And so the responsibility that we have is to challenge the efficacy of the system and make sure that we make clear up its lies, right? That we clear up its wrong behavior, that we clear up its direction and where it's headed and what it's trying to do for us to make sure that it does what it needs to do. Are we done with the age of policing? I don't know. But what I do know is this, that police shouldn't be responding to every single thing that we have happening in our community, right? I'm gonna give you this and I'm gonna shut up. So I had an incident.
Don't shut up.
I'm gonna shut up. I had an incident at work where a gentleman was on the line waiting to be serviced and he hauled off and smacked somebody else on the line. What was going on? We don't even know. There was never an argument. He just decided, I'm going to hit this guy. So he hit him. My staff went out to respond. He threatened my staff. By the time I got there, he was like, I guess he said, oh God, it's Jeff, let me go. So he decided to leave. So people are thinking, oh, call the police, call the police, call the police. I said, no, I got this. I'll take care of this, right? So I got on the phone with the police officer and I said, listen, I need you to help me get this guy because I don't want him to stay out here like this, but I'm not sending him to jail. I just need you to help me catch up to him, right? Without any infractions, without any drama. So the police officer was like, yeah, Jeff, I'll send so-and-so, one of the officers that I knew in the community. The officer showed up. He said, Jeff, where is he? Because I followed him from a distance. I said, that's him right there. The officer went up to him, no guns drawn, no chest out, very calmly, asked him what's going on. You know what the guy told the police officer? I need you to get me to NUMC because I haven't had my meds. That's the first thing that came out of this guy's mouth, right? And the officer said, Jeff, I'm so glad you called me. I said, well, I called because it could have been the difference between help and harm. We need to know the difference between what's help and what's harm.
And that's the point. You know you're making the point, and that's why part of the accountability is on us to teach our community that that's not the way to go. That's number one. But the other side of that coin is that we have a situation in our community now where we are not inequality financially is just like this. Your analogy about going to the wrong shop. I won't go to the dealership because it costs too much, but I'll go to the bootleg guy on the block who I'll know will do it for me cheap and get the job done. That's why I'll go to the police because it's the expedient thing to do. It's the cheap thing to do, even though now I'm recognizing it's the wrong thing to do. And that's what we got to tell our community. We got to stop sending them to them, but we got to teach our community because structurally, that's the mindset we've been in. You call the cops for everything. You call 911 for everything, you know, so much that it's in the songs and the lyrics, you know, it's part of the culture. We have to do the change with our people with that, while we same time changing the system. Brother, I submit to you, we don't need police. We have history of communities and of civilizations who lived prosperously and harmoniously because they had a restorative justice type of system set up where the community really was the village that raised the child, where the community had accountability for each other, and they didn't need a militaristic force in order to enforce laws. Laws were enforced by by the morality that they embedded in each other and by the accountability they have for each other. And we can get back to that. The problem is we think that that's a vision and not the truth. That we think that that's some utopia and not a reality. We need to revisit that history where we can do that.
So there's some excellent controversy on the chat box about police, about what happened in Rochester. So we're going to continue. We're going to find a way to do more of these webinars. One of them is going to be happening. Our regions are going to be taking some leadership here in the lower Hudson Valley. Jeremy is going to be hosting for the whole Hudson Valley a forum with a lot of the same, you know, some of the people here, police, government, mental health leaders. So watch out for that. Get on the NYAPRS news. The other regions, I think, will be doing that. And don't forget, right now, well, not right now, but very shortly at 1:15, look at the choice of the workshops, but on the bottom is the cultural exhibit. Check that out. It would be at a conference, it's a big deal. It would be like, electronically, you can walk into it and experience what the committee has put up. And again, think about that committee. Let's really get a boost to that committee. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining us. Every one of you was so inspiring to me. I felt outrage. I felt sadness. I felt resolve to go forward. And I feel particularly resolved to get that damn halt bill passed. So help us do that, please. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody. Great to see you. All right.
Bye, everybody. Bye,
Pleasure,
Mark,
pleasure.
Harvey, Jerome,
Pleasure.
Jeff.
Thank
This
you.
was great. Thank
I
you.
can't leave the meeting. I have to
Pleasure.
stay on
We
the phone.
can't go.
That was awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank
Hawk,
you.
thank you so much, man. That was
Right
great.
on.
Mark.
Thank you.
I
I'll be
appreciate
praying
y'all.
for you.
Yes,
We'll be in
Hawk, I'll be
touch.
praying for you, and I'll be down that way,
Thank
man.
you.
Give you a holler, bro. Try to get you
Right
some-
on. Please hit me up.
All
Let's
right.
get
Yes.
things moving. Let's
Yes,
get things.
sir.
Now we got this steam. We got this momentum. We got to drive the things home. We need driven home.
I
For
agree.
real.
I agree. We'll be reaching out, bro. Thank you.
All right. Peace, y'all.
All right,
Thanks,
peace.
Harvey.
Peace.
Yeah, yes,
Honor.
Harvey.
Good, man.
Yes.
It's hard for me to leave the meeting, but I guess I will. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.